I've been married for nearly 8 years, and for the most part, things had been going smoothly. My wife, Emily, and I had built a comfortable life together. We shared the kind of relationship that many people envied, stable, loving, and filled with little everyday moments that made it feel like we were in sync. But lately, I had noticed something shifting. Emily had been acting a little different. It wasn't obvious at first. Small changes, little things that made me wonder if there was something more beneath the surface. I remember the first time I thought something might be wrong. It was a Tuesday evening, and I had come home from work early, hoping to surprise her with a quiet dinner. Instead, I found her on the phone, speaking in a way that was a little too cheerful, a little too secretive. When she noticed me, she abruptly ended the call, and I brushed it off as nothing. Maybe it was just work or a friend. But then it happened more often. She began staying later at work, making excuses to go out with friends, and when we were together, there was an awkward distance. I tried to talk to her about it once, but she brushed it off. "I've just been busy, that's all," she'd say, offering me a quick smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I didn't press it. We'd been together long enough for me to know that sometimes people go through phases, and maybe this was just one of those times. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. As the weeks passed, the cracks in our relationship started to grow. I began noticing things I hadn't before, the way she seemed to be on her phone more, the sudden, unexplained absences. She stopped being affectionate, and when she did touch me, it felt forced. Even in bed, things had changed. We didn't make love as often, and when we did, it felt different, more mechanical than passionate. The worst part was the feeling of being ignored, of having someone who once was my best friend become a stranger. I couldn't help but feel like something was off, but I didn't want to believe it. I was afraid of what it meant if I was right. So I kept pushing it to the back of my mind, trying to convince myself that she was just stressed, that maybe it was something I wasn't understanding. But there was always this nagging feeling. The turning point came a few weeks ago when Emily had a girls' night out. I didn't think much of it at first, but as she was getting ready, I noticed she was taking more time than usual. Too much time. Her hair was perfectly styled. She wore a dress that she knew I loved, and her makeup was flawless. I was used to her looking good, of course, but this was different. She was going out of her way to look perfect, and I couldn't figure out why. When she left that night, I told myself I was being paranoid. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I spent the night pacing, mind racing with thoughts I didn't want to entertain. Maybe I was being irrational. Maybe I was overthinking it, letting my insecurities get the best of me. But a part of me knew, deep down, that something wasn't right. The following evening, Emily was on the phone again when I came home. She didn't even notice me at first. I stood there for a moment, just watching her, feeling this knot form in my stomach. The conversation was light, but there was an intimacy in her voice, something I hadn't heard in a long time. A strange, unsettling feeling swept over me. When she saw me standing there, she immediately hung up and gave me a quick, nervous smile. "Just my friend Sarah," she said quickly, as if she had something to hide. I didn't push it though. I should have, but I didn't. Instead, I let it slide, letting the doubt grow inside me, unresolved. It wasn't until one day when I had to work late that things really took a turn. I had planned on coming home early, but I ended up staying in the office longer than expected. When I arrived home, I could hear her laughing. It wasn't the sound of a friendly, casual laugh. It was different. It felt secretive. I froze for a moment, unsure of what I was hearing. She was sitting in the living room with her friends, and I overheard bits of their conversation. At first, I thought nothing of it, but as I listened more closely, I felt my heart sink. Her laughter, her voice, the things she was saying, it was all so casual, as if she didn't have a care in the world. But what hit me hardest was when she started talking about her new friend. She described him, in vivid detail, how he was someone she had met recently, someone who treated her the way she deserved to be treated. And then, with a confident laugh, she mentioned how her lover had a big tool, laughing as if it was nothing more than a funny anecdote. In that moment, my world stopped. I felt a rush of heat flood my face, my chest tightening. The words echoed in my head. A lover. She had a lover. The man I thought I knew, the woman I had shared my life with, was now someone I didn't recognize. It was like I had been hit with a punch to the gut. I could barely breathe, my mind reeling with disbelief, anger, and hurt all at once. I stood frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. I had always suspected something might be wrong, but hearing her speak so casually about her affair felt like a betrayal on a level I hadn't prepared for. She wasn't just hiding it from me, she was flaunting it. Her laugh, the tone in her voice, everything about it said that she had no remorse, no regret. It was as if I had been replaced, and I was nothing more than an afterthought. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. My heart raced as I quietly backed away from the door, my mind racing with thoughts I could barely comprehend. How long had this been going on? Who was he? Was he better than me? How had I missed all the signs? When I finally confronted Emily about it later that night, it wasn't the confrontation I had imagined. She didn't seem shocked, didn't seem remorseful. Instead, she was defensive, trying to justify everything, explaining how she had felt lonely and unfulfilled. But none of it mattered anymore. The damage had been done, and nothing she said could undo the betrayal I felt in that moment. The trust was shattered, and I didn't know how to rebuild it. I had never imagined something like this would happen to me. The realization that my wife had been unfaithful hit harder than anything I could have expected. The weight of her words, the casual tone in which she spoke about her lover, echoed in my mind over and over again. I kept thinking about how easily she had dismissed the man I thought I was, how she made it sound like our life together was just a passing chapter, something she could easily replace. Her words cut deep, each one tearing away at the image of the life we had built. But the worst part was that she wasn't even apologetic. There was no guilt in her voice when she spoke about him, only a sense of relief as if the affair had finally given her the satisfaction she'd been craving. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, playing and replaying everything I had heard. Every laugh, every casual remark, every word she had said. It all felt like a betrayal of the trust one had placed in her. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to demand answers, but I couldn't find the energy to do anything but lie there, feeling empty and hollow. I had questions, so many questions, but I was afraid of hearing the answers. What if this wasn't just a one-time thing? What if she had been seeing him for months? How long had I been blind to the signs? The end. The days after the confrontation were unbearable. I tried to act like everything was fine, but it was impossible. Each time I saw her, my mind was flooded with images of her with him. Her words haunted me, the way she had casually described their encounters, as if it was just another part of her life that I had no place in anymore. I tried to keep up appearances, pretending like I wasn't broken, but inside, I felt like I was drowning. Every conversation with her felt like an echo, a hollow attempt at restoring something that had already been destroyed. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the feeling of being replaced. I wasn't just her husband. I was the man who had failed her, the one who didn't measure up. I kept questioning myself, wondering where I had gone wrong. Had I stopped being the man she fell in love with? Had I become complacent, so caught up in the routine of life that I stopped paying attention to her needs? It was easy to blame her, to place the entire weight of the betrayal on her shoulders, but deep down, I knew I had played a part in it. The intimacy between us had faded long before she sought it elsewhere, and I hadn't noticed. I hadn't made her feel desired, hadn't made her feel seen. But even with all the self-reflection, none of it could erase the pain of what she had done. I found myself spiraling into anger. I was angry at her, at him, at myself. I hated feeling like this, powerless, humiliated, and betrayed. I wanted to scream, to demand answers from everyone involved, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there were no answers that would make it better. No matter what she said, no matter how many times she apologized, I couldn't unhear what I had overheard. I couldn't forget the image of her laughing, so carefree, as if the man who had shared her bed for years meant nothing. I started pulling away from her. The more time I spent with her, the more I felt like I was suffocating. The distance between us felt insurmountable. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the way she kept trying to explain herself, but I wasn't ready to listen. What was there to say anymore? She had broken my trust in a way that couldn't be fixed with words. The emotional connection we once had felt like a distant memory, something that was no longer accessible to either of us. One evening, when she asked if we could talk, I just couldn't. I told her I needed space, and that I wasn't ready to discuss anything more. I needed time to think, to process everything. I spent the next few days alone, in silence, trying to understand how to move forward. Part of me wanted to fight for our marriage, to somehow find a way to rebuild what had been lost, but another part of me knew that the damage was too deep. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. The thought of her with him, of her lying to me, of her choosing someone else over me, it ate away at me like a constant weight on my chest. During this time, I started leaning on my friends for support. I didn't want to burden them with the full weight of the situation, but I needed someone to talk to. I told them bits and pieces of what had happened, how I found out, how it felt, how I was struggling to make sense of it all. They all told me the same thing. I deserved better. Some of them suggested I leave her, that I should walk away and never look back. Others were more sympathetic, saying that relationships could be repaired if both parties were willing to work at it. But no matter what they said, I knew the decision ultimately had to come from me. I was the one who had to live with the consequences of my choice. One night, after a particularly difficult conversation with a close friend, I realized something. I had been so focused on her betrayal, on how she had hurt me, that I had neglected to ask myself the most important question: what do I want? I had been so wrapped up in the idea of revenge, in the idea of punishing her for what she had done, that I had lost sight of my own needs. What did I need to heal? What did I need to move forward? I realized I couldn't keep going in circles trying to fix something that was already broken. I didn't want to be angry anymore. I didn't want to be consumed by the need for answers. I needed to focus on myself, on finding my own peace. If I stayed with her, I knew it would take years, maybe longer, to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. And even then, I wasn't sure it would ever be the same. In the days that followed, I spent a lot of time reflecting on my own life. I thought about what had made me happy before all of this, the things I loved to do, the passions I had forgotten. I focused on myself, on regaining a sense of control. Slowly, the fog started to lift. I realized that no matter what happened, I would be okay. I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. Finally, I knew I had to make a decision. I had to stop pretending like I was okay with what had happened, like I could just forgive and forget. I had to be honest with myself and with Emily. So, I decided to confront her again, not out of anger, but out of necessity. It was time for me to decide what I wanted, and I wasn't going to let her make that decision for me anymore. I still didn't know if I could move past what she had done, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to settle for a life of resentment and bitterness. I would either walk away or find a way to rebuild, on my own terms. But no matter the outcome, I was ready to move forward. I had to. The decision wasn't easy. I knew it wasn't going to be something I could just walk away from without considering all the consequences. But after everything that had happened, after hearing her talk about her lover, after the endless nights spent replaying every word, every look, I realized I had to make a choice. I could either continue living in this toxic, painful state, or I could cut my losses and move on. I couldn't keep holding on to something that was already broken beyond repair. The trust between us had been shattered, and it seemed impossible to rebuild it. What was left wasn't love. It was an illusion, a remnant of something that no longer existed. When I confronted Emily again, it was clear that she didn't expect me to be so resolute. Her eyes were filled with surprise and a bit of fear, but I could see the guilt too. She had spent weeks trying to make amends, hoping that time would heal everything, but time hadn't made anything better. It had only given me more time to think, to reflect on the person she had become and the choices she had made. It was clear to me now that the betrayal wasn't just a single act. It was the culmination of months, maybe even years, of emotional neglect and dishonesty. I looked at her, and the weight of the situation hit me all over again. I had loved this woman for so long, had given her everything I had, and yet here we were. She had taken something so precious from me without a second thought. And for what? To fulfill her own desires, to chase a fleeting connection with someone who could never be me. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and the only way to move forward was to jump, to let go of everything I had known. But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep living like this. The hurt, the betrayal, it was suffocating me. Emily, I started, my voice steady but cold. I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't think I can forgive you for what you did. You chose him over me, over everything we had. I can't pretend like I'm okay with that.